The emergency lights flashed red across the massive chamber of the Galactic Council station. Ambassador Kelrith stood at the center podium, his gray skin looking almost white under the harsh lighting. Around him, representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated seats, and every single one of them looked afraid. 3 more colonies lost this week, Kelrith said, his voice carrying through the silent room. The Vrek swarm doesn't slow down. They don't negotiate. They just consume everything in their path. A holographic display appeared above the podium, showing a map of the galaxy's outer rim. Red markers indicated destroyed worlds. There were too many red markers now. They spread across the map like a disease. Commander Thros of the Kelthran military stood up. His crystalline body reflected the red emergency lights, making him look like he was on fire. We've thrown everything at them. Our best fleets, our most advanced weapons. Nothing works. The Vreks adapt to whatever we use. If we use plasma weapons, they develop resistance. If we use kinetic weapons, they change their armor. They learn from every battle. How many dead now? Someone asked from the back of the chamber. Kelrith looked down at his datapad. Official count is 2,700,000,000. Unofficial estimates are much higher. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Species that normally never agreed on anything were now united in their fear. The Vrek swarm had done what centuries of politics couldn't do. It had brought everyone together. But being together didn't mean they had a solution. An elderly Ashen delegate named Morvan slowly stood. She was almost 300 years old, and she had seen many wars. There is one option we haven't considered, she said quietly. The room fell silent. We could ask the humans, Morvan continued. The reaction was immediate. Half the delegates started talking at once. Some shouted in anger, others laughed. A few just looked confused. The humans, Thros said. They've only been in the council for 2 centuries. They're barely out of their home system. What could they possibly offer that our advanced militaries cannot? Morvan waited for the noise to die down. The humans are different. You all know this. Their psychological profiles don't match any other species we've encountered. They're aggressive, territorial, and they have an unusual relationship with violence. But more importantly, they win wars. Every conflict they've been involved in, they've won. Small conflicts against pirates and border raiders, another delegate argued. This is the Vrek swarm. This is extinction-level threat. Which is exactly why we need someone who thinks differently, Morvan said. The Vreks don't think like us. They don't have our morality or our limitations. Maybe we need to fight them with someone equally unconventional. Kelrith looked around the chamber. He could see the fear in everyone's eyes, but he could also see something else. Hope, maybe, or desperation. Sometimes those 2 things look the same. I'll put it to a vote, he said. All in favor of requesting military assistance from Earth? The vote was close, but fear won. The measure passed. 3 days later, the message arrived at Earth's Military Coordination Center in Geneva. Commander Thessa Caney sat in her office on the 42nd floor, reading through the official request on her holographic display. The message was formal and polite, filled with diplomatic language about mutual cooperation and shared defense interests. But Thessa could read between the lines. The Galactic Council was terrified, and they were asking Earth for help because they had nowhere else to turn. She pulled up the classified intelligence reports about the Vrek swarm. Her expression grew darker with every page. The Vreks were worse than the Council's public statements suggested. They weren't just winning, they were dominating. Every battle was a massacre. Every defense was broken. The galaxy's combined military forces were being torn apart. Thessa stood up and walked to the window. Below her, the city of Geneva spread out in all directions. Millions of people going about their lives, not knowing that somewhere far away, an alien species was eating entire worlds. She pressed a button on her desk. Get me the Joint Chiefs. Emergency meeting. And I need the Security Council on standby. The meeting lasted 6 hours. Military generals, intelligence directors, and government representatives filled the secure conference room. Thessa presented the Council's request and the intelligence on the Vrek's threat. They want soldiers, General Morrison said. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from 3 different wars. They want us to send our Marines, our special forces. They want conventional military support. That won't work, Thessa said. The Vreks have already beaten conventional forces. They adapt too fast. They don't fear death. They don't retreat. We send regular troops and we'll just add to the body count. Then what do you propose? The UN Secretary General asked. Tessa pulled up a file on the main screen. It was marked with multiple security clearances and warning labels. We send something else. Something the galaxy has never seen before. Something that matches the Vrex in aggression and ruthlessness. You can't be serious, Morrison said, staring at the file name. I'm completely serious, Tessa replied. The Council asked for soldiers. We don't send soldiers. We send what we keep locked away for the worst possible situations. We send the condemned. The room erupted in arguments. Some people said it was too dangerous. Others said it was immoral. A few said it was brilliant. They're criminals, someone protested. Murderers, psychopaths. We keep them in the redemption yards for a reason. Exactly, Tessa said. We keep them locked up because they're too dangerous for normal society. They have no fear, no hesitation. They're violent beyond measure, and they can't be reasoned with. They're also the most effective combat assets humanity has ever produced. The yards have a 94% success rate in deployment scenarios. Because they don't care if they die, Morrison said quietly. Yes, Tessa agreed. Because they don't care if they die. They only care about fighting. And right now, the galaxy needs fighters who won't stop, won't retreat, and won't break. The debate continued for another 2 hours. Finally, a vote was called. The decision passed by a narrow margin. Tessa sent the response to the Galactic Council herself. She kept it brief and professional. Request approved. Deploying specialized units. Prepare for arrival. She didn't explain what specialized units meant. The Council would find out soon enough. As she closed the communication channel, Tessa felt a weight settle on her shoulders. She had just convinced Earth's leadership to send 2,000 of humanity's most dangerous individuals into deep space. They were criminals, yes, but they were also the only ones who might actually win this war. The galaxy had asked for soldiers. Humanity was sending something much worse. In the redemption yards facilities scattered across Earth's moon, messages were being delivered to cell blocks. 2,000 inmates with life sentences and violent histories were being offered a choice. Stay in their cells forever, or fight for humanity one more time. Most of them smiled when they heard the news. They had been caged for so long. Now they were being let out to do what they did best. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The Vrex swarm had awakened something in humanity. The willingness to unleash its own monsters to fight the monsters from space. And once those monsters were loose, there would be no going back. The 3 transport ships dropped out of slipspace without any warning. One moment the space around Forward Station Epsilon was empty, and the next moment the human vessels were just there, floating silent and dark against the stars. Commander Teros watched from the station's observation deck. He had been expecting something impressive. Humanity always liked to make an entrance. Their ships were usually bright and loud, covered in flags and identification markers. These ships were different. They were painted flat black with no markings at all. They looked like holes in space. They're here, Teros said into his communicator. Alert all departments. The human reinforcements have arrived. Around the station, military personnel from a dozen different species prepared to receive their new allies. They had set up welcome ceremonies, prepared integration briefings, and organized joint command meetings. The galactic military was good at incorporating new forces. They had been doing it for centuries. But as the human ships docked and the airlocks opened, Teros felt something he hadn't expected. Unease. The first humans to come through were normal enough. A few officers in standard Earth military uniforms, some technicians, a medical team. They moved efficiently, setting up equipment and running system checks. Nothing unusual there. Then the others came through. 2,000 figures in black composite armor walked in perfect formation down the docking ramps. Their armor was smooth and featureless with no unit patches or rank insignia. Their helmets completely covered their faces, showing only dark visors that reflected nothing. They moved like machines, every step identical, every movement precise. But something was wrong. Teros could feel it, the way they held themselves, the way they moved. There was a tension in their body language, like springs wound too tight, like violence waiting to happen. The human military escorts walked alongside them, but Teros noticed something strange. The escorts weren't just guiding them. They were watching them, carefully, the way guards watch prisoners. A human woman stepped forward from the group. She was middle-aged, with a scar across her left cheek and eyes that had seen too much combat. She stopped in front of Teros and gave a minimal salute. "Commander Teros," she said. Her voice was flat and professional. "I'm Warden Moss. I'm in command of this unit." "Warden?" Teros asked. That wasn't a military rank he recognized. "It's my title," Moss said, offering no further explanation. "My people are ready for deployment briefings. Where do you want us?" Teros gestured toward the main conference hall. "We've prepared integration protocols. Your forces will need to coordinate with our existing command structure. We have tactical briefings scheduled, equipment compatibility checks, and we don't need integration protocols," Moss interrupted. "My people operate independently. Just tell us where the enemy is and we'll handle it." "That's not how military operations work," Teros said, trying to keep his voice patient. "We have established procedures, chain of command, coordination requirements. Your procedures don't apply to us," Moss said simply. Teros felt his frustration growing. He looked past Moss at the 2,000 silent figures in black armor. They hadn't moved. They just stood there perfectly still like statues. It was unnatural. "Listen," Teros said, lowering his voice. "I appreciate Earth sending help, but we need to work together. That means following established military protocol." One of the Galactic Council's diplomatic officers, a Pelthian named Vesic, approached. He had been assigned to coordinate with the human forces. He looked nervous. "Commander Teros," Vesic said quietly, "perhaps we should review the human personnel files first. There are some unusual aspects to this unit." "What kind of unusual aspects?" Teros asked. Moss answered before Vesic could speak. "My people have internal monitoring systems, neural dampeners, behavioral inhibitors. We also have a full psychological support team and a security detail that watches them at all times." Teros stared at her. "You're describing equipment for controlling dangerous prisoners, not soldiers." "Yes," Moss said. "I don't understand." "Why would soldiers need—" "They're not soldiers," Moss said. "You asked for soldiers. We sent something better. We sent the ones who don't stop. Ever." Teros looked at Vesic, who pulled up a holographic display. Files began appearing in the air between them. Personnel records, psychological evaluations, criminal histories. Teros started reading. His crystalline features shifted from confusion to shock to horror. "These are criminals," he said, his voice rising. "Murderers. War criminals. These files say this individual killed 200 people in a single incident. This one was convicted of genocide. This one—" He stopped reading, his hand shaking. "These aren't military personnel. These are monsters. They're both," Moss said calmly. "They're humanity's monsters. And they're very good at what they do." "This is insane," Teros said. He turned to face Moss directly. "Your government sent us convicts? Psychopaths? We asked for military support." "And we gave you what will actually work," Moss replied. Her voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath it. "The Vreks don't negotiate. They don't surrender. They fight until they're dead. You need fighters who match that profile. Regular soldiers have self-preservation instincts. They have morality. They have fear. My people don't have any of those things. What are they?" Teros demanded. "They're what humanity created in our darkest moments," Moss said. "They're what happens when violence becomes the only language someone speaks. They're the individuals we lock away and try to forget about because they remind us of what we're capable of." More officers were gathering now, reading the files, looking at the silent figures in black armor. The word spread quickly through the station. The humans hadn't sent their military. They had sent their prison's worst inmates. A Kelthran general named Sartha pushed through the crowd. She was a decorated combat veteran with 50 years of military experience. "This is unacceptable," she said. "I won't put my people alongside criminals and madmen. Send them back." "You can't send us back." One of the black-armored figures spoke for the first time. The voice was male, distorted by his helmet, but Teros could hear something in it. Eagerness. Hunger. "Quiet," Moss snapped, and the figure went silent immediately. "See?" Sartha said. "They can't even maintain discipline. This is a disaster." "They maintain perfect discipline in combat," Moss said. "That's all that matters. How can you trust them?" Teros asked. "How can you expect us to trust them?" Moss looked at the 2,000 figures behind her, then back at Teros. "I don't trust them. I control them. There's a difference. Every one of these individuals volunteered for the Redemption Yards program. They fight for humanity in exchange for microscopic reductions in their sentences. Most of them are serving multiple life terms. They know they're never getting out, but fighting is better than sitting in a cell. And they're very, very good at it. This is immoral, Vesic said quietly. Using criminals as weapons. It's barbaric. Probably, Moss agreed. But it works. The Redemption Yards have a 94% mission success rate, higher than any conventional military unit in human history. Because they don't care about casualties, Sartha said. Because they don't care about dying, Moss corrected. They care very much about casualties, enemy casualties. These people are what they are because they're good at hurting others. We just pointed them in a useful direction. An alert suddenly blared through the station. All the screens switched to tactical displays showing incoming contacts. Lots of contacts. Vrek swarm, a communications officer announced. Multiple signatures. They're heading for Teros colony. Population 3 million. Everyone turned to look at the displays. The Vreks were moving fast, their ships swarming across the screen like insects. Teros didn't have significant defenses. It would be a massacre. Scramble all available forces, Sartha ordered. We need to... Send us, Moss said. Everyone turned to look at her. Send my people, Moss repeated. You want to see what they can do? Here's your chance. Let the condemned fight. If they fail, you can send them home and never ask for human help again. Thros looked at the tactical display, then at the silent figures in black armor, then back at the display. 3 million people were about to die. His forces couldn't reach Teros in time. The only unit close enough was the human unit. The monsters from Earth. Fine, Thros said. They're deployed. But this is on you, Warden. Moss nodded slowly. She turned to her people. You heard the man. We're going to Teros. Rules of engagement are simple. Kill everything that isn't human or colonist. No limits, no restrictions. Show them what you are. For the first time, the 2,000 figures moved. They turned in perfect unison and marched back toward their ships. But now there was something different in the way they moved. Purpose, anticipation. One of them laughed. The sound carried across the docking bay and it made Thros's skin crawl. What have we done? Vesic whispered. We've let them out of their cages, Moss said quietly, watching her people board the transport ships. Now we'll see if that was salvation or the end of everything. The communication came through on encrypted channels 2 hours after the condemned departed for Teros. Commander Thros sat in his office, unable to sleep, when his terminal lit up with an incoming message marked Classification Maximum Security. It was from Galactic Intelligence. Thros opened the file and immediately wished he hadn't. The report was titled Analysis Human Redemption Yards Program. Full assessment. Someone in intelligence had done deep research into exactly what humanity had sent them. The first section was a historical overview. The Redemption Yards program had started 50 years ago, after Earth's last major internal conflict. During that war, military commanders discovered something disturbing. Some soldiers didn't just fight well, they enjoyed it too much. They were effective in combat, incredibly effective, but they couldn't turn it off when the fighting stopped. They kept killing even after the enemy surrendered. They couldn't reintegrate into civilian life. Most societies would have simply imprisoned these individuals. Humanity did something different. They created facilities on the moon, isolated from Earth's population, and offered violent offenders a choice. Spend life in a cell or fight for humanity when needed. Between battles, they stayed locked up. But when war came, they were unleashed. The program expanded over the decades. It started with soldiers who had gone too far. Then it included serial killers whose psychological profiles suggested they could be controlled. Then war criminals from various conflicts. Then others. Individuals whose capacity for violence was so extreme that normal prisons couldn't hold them safely. Thros kept reading, his hands trembling. The file included case study subject 447, real name classified. Former Special Operations soldier who continued a counterinsurgency campaign for 3 years after the war officially ended. Killed over 300 enemy combatants and an unknown number of civilians. When finally captured, he expressed no remorse. He just said he was completing the mission. Sentenced to 7 life terms. Deployed in the Redemption Yards program 16 times. Survived all 16. Current kill count in program estimated at 2,000 plus. Ghost. Real name classified. Serial killer active for 8 years before capture. 67 confirmed victims. Psychological profile indicated severe antisocial personality disorder, with complete lack of empathy. Experts said she killed because it was the only thing that made her feel anything. Sentenced to death, later commuted to life imprisonment. Deployed in Redemption Yard's program 9 times. Specialized in infiltration and night operations. Current kill count in program, estimated at 800 plus. The file went on. And on. 2,000 individual profiles, each one more horrifying than the last. Teros found himself reading about a man who had killed his entire unit during a psychological break, then continued fighting the enemy alone for 6 days, about a woman who had developed such efficient killing techniques that military academies studied her methods while she sat in prison, about a former intelligence operative who went rogue and spent 2 years as a freelance assassin before being caught. These weren't soldiers. They were weapons shaped like people. The intelligence report included psychological assessments. The common factor among all the condemned was simple. Violence was their natural state. Normal people had to be trained to overcome their resistance to killing. These individuals had no such resistance. Some had been born that way. Others had been made that way through combat or trauma. But the result was the same. They were permanently broken in ways that made them perfect for war and impossible for everything else. The report also included information about the control measures. Every member of the condemned wore armor with integrated monitoring systems, neural dampeners that could be activated remotely if they showed signs of targeting friendlies, behavioral inhibitors that would lock their muscles if they tried to disobey direct orders. Some had additional implants, mood regulators, aggression suppressors, even explosive charges that could be detonated if they attempted escape. Humanity didn't trust the condemned. They just used them. Teros closed the file and sat in darkness, thinking. Then he opened a communication channel to Warden Moss on the transport ship heading to Teros. Her face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Teros could see the interior of the transport. The condemned sat in rows, completely still, waiting. "Commander Teros," Moss said. "Something wrong?" "I just read the intelligence report," Teros said. "The full report on your people." "Ah," Moss said. "I wondered when someone would dig that deep." "These individuals are the worst humanity has produced," Teros said. "You're sending them to a colony with 3 million civilians. What if they can't control themselves? What if they target the people they're supposed to protect?" "They won't," Moss said simply. "How can you be sure?" "Because they want to fight," Moss said. "The condemned aren't stupid. They know the deal. If they follow orders and complete missions, they get to leave their cells. If they break discipline or harm innocents, they go back to isolation permanently. Most of them have been locked away for decades. They'll do anything to avoid going back. Most of them?" Teros caught the qualifier. "There are always risks," Moss admitted, "but the control systems work. We've run this program for 50 years. Only 3 incidents of condemned targeting civilians, and all 3 were immediately stopped by the neural dampeners and security teams. The rest understand that the enemy is out there, not behind them." "This feels wrong," Teros said, "using criminals as soldiers. It goes against everything the Galactic Council stands for." "I know," Moss said. "That's why we didn't explain in detail when we accepted your request. We knew you'd refuse if you understood. But here's the truth, Commander. The Virex are winning. They're consuming worlds. Your conventional forces can't stop them. You need something unconventional. You need something that matches their level of aggression. You need predators to fight predators." "We asked for soldiers," Teros said quietly. "And we sent you something better," Moss replied. "You asked for people who would fight? We sent people who live to fight. You asked for warriors who wouldn't give up. We sent warriors who can't give up because fighting is the only thing they have left." On the screen behind Moss, one of the condemned turned his head slightly. Teros couldn't see his face through the helmet, but he could see the body language, anticipation, eagerness, like a hunting dog waiting to be released. "They're not afraid of the Vrex," Teros observed. "No," Moss agreed. "They're not afraid of anything. That's what makes them useful." "And terrifying. What happens after this mission?" Teros asked. "Assuming they survive? They go back to their cells," Moss said. "Back to their isolation. Back to waiting for the next time humanity needs monsters to fight its battles." "And they accept this?" "They don't have a choice," Moss said. "But yes, in a way they accept it. This is what they are. This is what they're good at. Better to use that than waste it. Teros was about to respond when alarms sounded on both his station and Moss's transport. "We're approaching Teros," Moss said, checking her displays. "Vrex ships are already in orbit. They're dropping ground forces on the colony. Population centers are under attack. My ships won't arrive for another 4 hours," Teros said. "You'll be alone down there." "We prefer it that way," Moss said. "Less chance of friendly fire. The condemned work better when they don't have to worry about who they're shooting." Teros watched as Moss's transport began its descent toward Teros. The planet appeared on the screen, a blue-green world with visible cities and agricultural zones. "And dropping from orbit like falling stars, the Vrex landing ships," Warden Moss, Teros said. "I don't know if this was the right decision." "Deploying your people?" "Neither do I," Moss admitted. "But it's too late now. We're committed. The condemned are going into battle, and we're all going to see what they're really capable of." "What are you expecting to happen?" Teros asked. Moss looked at the camera, her scarred face emotionless. "Honestly, I expect the Vrex are about to learn that they're not the scariest thing in the galaxy anymore. I expect they're about to meet something worse than themselves. I expect this battle to be remembered for a very long time." "Why?" "Because the Vrex don't understand what's coming for them," Moss said. "They've fought civilized species who have rules and morality and limits. They've never fought something that has none of those things. They've never fought humans who are allowed to be what they really are." The transport shook as it entered Teros's atmosphere. Behind Moss, the condemned began standing up, checking their weapons, preparing for deployment. "Good luck, Warden," Teros said. "We don't need luck," Moss replied. "We need targets. And Teros has plenty of those." The communication ended. Teros sat alone in his office, watching the tactical display as the human transport descended toward a colony under siege. 3 million civilians, unknown number of Rex ground forces, and 2,000 human criminals about to be unleashed on an unsuspecting enemy. He thought about the files he'd read, the psychological profiles, the kill counts, the descriptions of what these individuals had done to earn their place in the redemption yards. Then he thought about the Vrex, who had been terrorizing the galaxy for months, who thought they were the ultimate predators, who believed nothing could stop them. The city of New Haven on Teros was burning. The Vrex had landed 3 hours ago, and their swarm forces were tearing through the streets with mechanical efficiency. The aliens moved like insects, coordinated and relentless, overwhelming the local defense forces through sheer numbers and adaptability. The Vrex were perfect soldiers in their own way. They felt no fear, never retreated without strategic reason, and adapted to enemy tactics within minutes. They had conquered 17 worlds using the same approach: drop overwhelming force, destroy all resistance, consume resources, move to the next target. On Teros, it was working again. The colony's defense forces had put up a brave fight, but brave wasn't enough. The Vrex were pushing toward the central district where most of the civilian population had gathered in emergency shelters. Then, the human transport arrived. The ship didn't bother with standard landing protocols. It came in fast and low, engines screaming, and dropped its cargo directly into the combat zone. 2,000 figures in black armor fell from the sky, using controlled descent packs to land in the middle of the battlefield. The condemned hit the ground running. There was no formation, no standard military deployment. They simply scattered into the city like predators released into hunting grounds. Some went solo. Others formed small groups of 2 or 3. They had no apparent coordination, no visible command structure, but they moved with purpose. Subject 447 landed on a rooftop overlooking a street filled with Vrex warriors. He didn't pause to assess the situation or plan his approach. He just launched himself off the roof, firing his weapon on the way down. 3 Vrex fell before he hit the ground. He landed in the middle of the swarm, his armored body crushing one alien beneath him, and then he started killing. His movements were efficient and brutal. No wasted motion, no hesitation. He fought like someone who had been doing this his entire life because he had. Every shot hit. Every strike killed. When his weapon ran empty, he switched to another. When that ran empty, he used his combat knife. When an alien managed to damage his armor, he didn't slow down, he just kept fighting. Blood mixing with the oil from broken Vrex bodies. The Vrex tried to adapt. They changed their formation, trying to surround him. He moved faster. They brought heavier weapons. He used their own dead as shields. They attempted to overwhelm him with numbers. He just killed more efficiently. In 6 minutes, Subject 447 cleared an entire city block alone. 43 Vrex dead. He sustained 7 injuries, none of them serious enough to stop him. When the block was clear, he moved to the next one without pause. On the other side of the city, Ghost was doing what she did best. While the other condemned fought in direct combat, she moved through the shadows, silent and invisible. She had studied the Vrex during the descent. Watching how they moved, how they communicated, how they coordinated. Now she used that knowledge against them. She infiltrated a Vrex command position, moving past their sentries without being detected. Inside, she found their local commanders coordinating the assault. She killed all 6 of them before any could trigger an alarm. Without coordination, the Vrex forces in that sector fell into chaos. Then she moved to the next command position, and the next. By the time the Vrex realized what was happening, Ghost had eliminated every commander in the northern district. Their forces were still fighting, but they were no longer working together. And when predators don't work together, they become prey. Across the city, similar scenes played out. The condemned were doing what they were created to do: kill without mercy, fight without fear, and never, ever stop. A former soldier known only as Reaper led a group of 5 condemned through the industrial district. The Vrex had concentrated forces there, using the warehouses as strong points. Standard military tactics would have involved calling for air support, establishing a siege, or attempting to negotiate. Reaper walked straight through the front door. His team moved like a single organism, covering each other with practiced efficiency. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like killers who happened to work together. When the Vrex tried to block them, they went through them. When the aliens tried to flank them, they killed the flankers. When heavy weapons were brought to bear, they closed the distance so fast that the weapons became useless. The Vrex had never encountered anything like this. Every other species they'd fought had self-preservation instincts. They retreated when hurt. They hesitated when facing superior numbers. They valued their own lives. The condemned had no such limitations. They were already serving life sentences. Death was just another cell, and probably a more comfortable one. Warden Moss monitored the battle from the transport ship in orbit. Her screen showed feeds from helmet cameras, vital signs, and tactical displays. What she saw was both impressive and horrifying. The condemned were winning. Against overwhelming numbers, against an enemy that had defeated every conventional military force it encountered, they were winning. But they were winning because they fought like demons. No restraint, no mercy. Pure focused violence channeled toward a single goal. Warden, one of her officers said, "We're getting communications from the galactic military. They're asking for status updates." "Tell them the operation is proceeding as planned," Moss said, not taking her eyes off the screens. "They're asking about civilian casualties." "0, Moss replied. "The condemned are following their programming. They're targeting only Vrex forces. They're also asking about condemned casualties." Moss checked her vital signs display. 12 dead, 43 wounded. None of the wounded have stopped fighting. The officer stared at her. "They're still fighting while wounded?" "They don't know how to stop," Moss said simply. "Pain is just information to them. As long as they can move, they keep fighting." On one of the screens, a condemned named Havoc had been hit by Vrex heavy weapons fire. His left arm was barely attached, and his armor showed critical damage. A normal soldier would have retreated to seek medical attention. Havoc just switched his weapon to his right hand and continued forward, leaving a trail of his own blood mixed with alien remains. "Havoc, fall back for medical treatment," Moss ordered through the communication channel. "Negative," Havoc replied, his voice tight with pain but steady. "Still operational. Target-rich environment. Falling back would waste opportunity." That was the condemned mindset in 3 sentences. Even severely injured, they saw only opportunities to kill the enemy. Their programming, both psychological and technological, kept them focused on the mission above everything else, including their own survival. The battle raged for 4 hours. The Vrex, for the first time since their invasion began, found themselves losing ground. Their adaptation abilities meant nothing against an enemy that adapted faster. Their numerical superiority meant nothing against fighters who didn't care about odds. Their psychological warfare tactics meant nothing against an enemy that was already broken in worse ways. Subject 447 penetrated deep into Vrex territory. fighting his way into one of their landing ships. The interior was designed for their insectoid bodies, with narrow passages and low ceilings that would have given any normal soldier claustrophobia. He just bent lower and kept killing. By the time he exited the ship, every Vrex inside was dead, and the ship itself was damaged beyond repair. Ghost completed her assassination campaign, eliminating every Vrex commander she could find. Without leadership, the Vrex forces became increasingly disorganized. They were still dangerous, but they were no longer unstoppable. The turning point came when the Vrex attempted one of their signature tactics, a massive frontal assault designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers. They gathered every available force and charged toward the human positions. The condemned charged back. Standard military doctrine would have called for defensive positions, suppressing fire, and gradual retreat while calling for reinforcements. The condemned just ran straight at the enemy, screaming war cries through their helmet speakers, firing as they ran. The two forces collided in the city's main plaza, hand to hand. Melee combat. No room for tactics or strategy, just pure violence. And in pure violence, the condemned were supreme. When the galactic relief forces finally arrived 4 hours later, they found New Haven in ruins but still standing. The civilian shelters were intact. The population was safe. And in the streets, surrounded by mountains of Vrex corpses, the condemned were still fighting. There were only a few hundred Vrex left now, scattered and disorganized, but the condemned pursued them anyway. They wouldn't stop until every last enemy was dead. Commander Teros descended with the relief forces, stepping out into the plaza. He had seen battlefields before. He was a combat veteran, but nothing had prepared him for this. The street was carpeted with bodies. Vrex bodies, thousands of them, and walking among them covered in blood, both alien and their own. The condemned were methodically checking for survivors and eliminating them. One of them approached Teros. It was Subject 447, barely recognizable under the layers of gore. His armor was damaged in a dozen places. He was limping. One of his helmet's optical sensors was cracked, but he was still moving. Area nearly secure, 447 said, his voice distorted by damage to his helmet speakers. Estimate 96% Vrex casualties. Requesting permission to pursue the remaining 4%. The footage from Teros spread across the galaxy faster than any government could contain it. Helmet camera recordings, orbital surveillance, civilian recordings from the shelters. Within 3 days, every species in the Galactic Council had seen what the condemned could do. The reactions were immediate and powerful. Some species were grateful. They had been losing the war against the Vrex, watching their colonies burn, and the condemned had stopped that. They sent messages of thanks to Earth, offering trade agreements and political support. Other species were terrified. They looked at the footage and didn't see heroes. They saw monsters barely controlled by humanity's leash. They began asking questions. How many of these warriors did Earth have? What would happen if they were ever turned against the Council? What kind of species created such individuals and then used them as weapons? Ambassador Kelrith called an emergency council session 2 weeks after Teros. The chamber was packed. Every seat filled, every species represented. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. We need to discuss Earth's contribution to our defense, Kelrith said, his voice carefully neutral. The deployment of what they call the condemned. Commander Tessa Caney stood in the human delegation area. She had been expecting this conversation. Earth's government had prepared her with talking points and diplomatic responses. But looking around the chamber, she decided to skip the diplomacy. You're afraid, Tessa said, her voice carrying through the chamber. You saw what our people did on Teros, and now you're afraid of us. The chamber erupted. Multiple delegates started talking at once, some denying the accusation, others confirming it. Kelrith called for order. Commander Caney, that's not... It's exactly it, Tessa interrupted. Let's be honest. Before Teros, you saw humans as useful allies. Young, aggressive, but manageable. Now you've seen what we keep locked away, and you're wondering what that says about us as a species. You used criminals as soldiers, a Pelthian delegate said. You unleashed psychopaths on a battlefield and called it military strategy. We used the right tool for the job, Tessa replied. The Vrex were winning. Your conventional forces couldn't stop them. We sent what would work. And what happens next time? Commander Teros stood, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber lights. What happens when humanity decides to deploy the condemned against someone else? Against us? The chamber went quiet. That's what this is really about, Thessa said. You're not upset that we saved Teros. You're upset that we showed you our teeth. You're upset that you finally understand what humans are capable of. You created monsters, someone said from the back. No, Thessa said firmly. We revealed that monsters exist. Every species has them. Individuals whose brains don't work right, whose capacity for violence exceeds normal parameters, who can't function in peaceful society. The difference is that we found a way to use them instead of just locking them away forever. That's not ethical, Ambassador Morvan said. She had supported requesting human help, but even she looked troubled now. Using criminals, exploiting their conditions, they volunteered, Thessa said. Every single one. We offered them a choice. Stay in maximum security isolation for life, or fight for humanity when needed and earn small sentence reductions. They chose to fight. Nobody forced them. Because the alternative was worse, Morvan replied. Yes, Thessa agreed. The alternative was worse, but it was still a choice, and they keep choosing to fight. After Teros, we asked if anyone wanted to be removed from the program. Not a single condemned requested removal. They want to fight. It's the only thing that makes them feel alive. Commander Thros pulled up a holographic display showing footage from Teros. The image showed Subject 447 covered in blood, still fighting despite severe injuries. This isn't normal, Thros said. This isn't how soldiers behave. Look at him, he's enjoying it. You can see it in his body language. He's having fun, probably, Thessa said. That's what makes him effective. Normal soldiers hate killing. They do it because they must, and it traumatizes them. The condemned are different. Violence is their natural state. Using them in combat is just letting them be what they are. And that doesn't concern you? Kelrith asked. Having individuals like that in your society? It concerns us deeply, Thessa said. That's why we built the redemption yards. That's why they're monitored constantly. That's why they have neural dampeners and behavioral inhibitors. We know they're dangerous. We've always known. But when you asked for help against the Vrex, we had to make a decision. Send conventional forces that would probably fail, or send the condemned who would probably succeed. We chose success. The holographic display changed, showing tactical data. Since Teros, the condemned have been deployed 7 more times. 7 more victories. The Vrex are retreating. For the first time since this war started, we're winning. At what cost to our principles? Morvan asked quietly. At the cost of survival, Thessa replied. You asked us for help, we gave it. Now you're upset that our help wasn't pretty. War isn't pretty. The Vrex certainly weren't pretty when they were consuming your colonies. A long silence filled the chamber. Finally, a delegate from the Ashen Collective stood. Commander Caney, I have a question. If we asked you to withdraw the condemned, would humanity comply? Thessa looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. Yes, if the Council formally requests withdrawal, we'll recall them immediately. They'll go back to their cells and you'll never see them again. But the Vrex won't stop. They'll keep coming, and your conventional forces will keep losing. Is that what you want? Nobody answered. I'll be honest with you, Thessa said. When the Council first asked for military assistance, Earth's government debated for days. Some wanted to send our regular military. Others wanted to refuse entirely. I'm the one who argued for sending the condemned. Do you know why? Why? Kelrith asked. Because I wanted you to understand, Thessa said. For 2 centuries we've been the new species. The young ones. The ones who joined the galactic community and tried to fit in. We learned your languages, adopted your customs, followed your rules. And the whole time you looked at us like we were children. Inexperienced. Not quite civilized. She gestured to the holographic footage of the condemned. This is honesty. This is us showing you what we really are. Yes, we can be civilized. Yes, we can follow rules and engage in diplomacy. But underneath that, we're the species that fought its way to the top of its planet's food chain through pure aggression. We're the species that nearly destroyed itself multiple times and somehow survived. We're the species that took our worst individuals and figured out how to weaponize them. You're trying to intimidate us, Thros said. I'm trying to be clear with you. Thessa replied. The condemned aren't our military. They're not our best. They're what we keep locked away in case of emergency. This is us holding back. If humanity ever decided to stop holding back, If we ever deployed our actual military with the same lack of restraint we give the condemned, the galaxy would burn. The chamber erupted again. Threats and accusations flew. Some delegates demanded that humans be expelled from the council. Others called for sanctions. Kelrith called for order repeatedly until the chamber finally quieted. "Commander Caney," he said, his voice heavy, "are you threatening the Galactic Council?" "No," Thessa said. "I'm informing you. There's a difference. Humanity has no intention of attacking anyone. We're peaceful by choice, not by necessity. But I wanted you to understand what that choice means. Every day humanity chooses to be civilized. Every day we choose to keep our monsters locked away. Every day we choose peace over violence. Never forget that it's a choice." She pulled up another display, this one showing current tactical data. "The Vrex are in full retreat. Intelligence suggests they'll withdraw from Council space entirely within 3 months. The war is almost over. The condemned did what you asked them to do, they saved your colonies. And now we're supposed to just forget what they are?" Someone asked. "No," Thessa said. "Now you're supposed to remember what they are. Remember that humanity has these individuals and can deploy them when needed. Remember that we chose to use them to save you, not to threaten you. Remember that we could have refused your request for help, and the Vrex would still be consuming your worlds." The vote came 3 hours later. The motion to expel humanity from the Council failed. The motion to restrict human military deployments failed. Instead, the Council passed a resolution thanking Earth for its assistance and formally requesting that the condemned remain available for deployment against the Vrex until the threat was eliminated. It was, everyone understood, a political compromise born from fear and gratitude in equal measure. After the session, Thessa returned to her transport ship. She found Warden Moss waiting in her office. "I watched the council session," Moss said. "That was quite a speech." "I told them the truth," Thessa said, sitting down heavily. "They needed to understand." "Do you think they really understand?" Moss asked. "Or are they just too afraid to push back?" "Both," Thessa said. "They understand that humanity is more dangerous than they thought. They understand that the condemned are proof of what we're capable of, and they're afraid of what that means for their future."